Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Creatively and welcome to Game Changing Fashion. My name is April Walker and I'm so excited to be with you tonight. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself and also how we're going to rock this class today. Hello, hello, Kinto. And so I am known as the Sacagawea of urban fashion. That means that I'm the first woman in streetwear with a brand, and I'm one of the trailblazers of streetwear. I started in 1987 and then created my first brand shortly after, and really was one of the first to dominate it in an all male dominated world, like in business, in fashion, which was not easy all of the time. But from there, we became one of the first to implement product placement and do a lot of product placement. We found out about the power of that in building our relationships and working with icons like Tupac, Biggie, Wu-Tang Clan, Queen Latifah, Red Hot Chili Peppers, LL Cool J, Naughty by Nature, Run DMC. I had a styling division that I created that was one of the branches that I found that helped us in that product placement. As well, we became one of the first to write millions in sales with Walkerwear, my brand. And we also became one of the first to kick in distribution doors on a national and global level and really let the world know that streetwear was not a fad. We were here for the keeping. So since then, I've become an educator. I share a lot. I'm a disruptor. I don't like that word educator, to be honest, guys. I like to say I share and I help others, empower them in designing the lives they imagine. I do that from middle school to college level with a program that I do called BYOB. I'm also one of the contributors with Parsons and Yellow Brick Learning. I work with them in a course called Streetwear Essentials. I am on Netflix right now, and I have a show called, it's not my show, but it's myself, Dapper Dan, Kirby John Raymond, Misa Hilton. It's about culture shifters and just shaping culture through fashion. And it's called The Remix, Hip Hop Times Fashion. So I'd say check those things out. We're in books. We exhibit internationally. I'm very blessed. And so that's why I'm here. I want to make sure that I share with you and you get some real nuggets. So that's enough about me. Tonight is not going to be about me. Tonight, I've taken the time to really be methodical about how we can share what I like to drop on you in gems. And so I have a presentation to do that with. But before I start the presentation, can you just put in the chat if you have a brand, who you are, so I can say hello to you? And also, do you have a brand? Can you type in your brand if you have a brand? If you're thinking about having a brand, can you type that in? That would be great. I would love to know who we have here. Punk Majesty is your brand. I love that name. Daisha Crenshaw, Big Blue Apparel. Welcome. Thinking about starting a brand. Okay. CEO of James Goudry. I hope I didn't just chop that name up. Thank you. Okay. We have some, I love upcycle brands, No Thread, Neo Thread. Right. Okay. We have some fashion people in the house. All right. Well, let's get into it. Thank you for sharing. All right. Hi, Jamie. So before I start, I'm going to share my screen. And you guys with me? We are going to rock out.
Looks great, April.
All right, perfect. So this is me a few years ago. And this was towards the beginning of my journey. In each one of these phases, I broke this class up into 15 minutes with 3 different lessons or 3 different points, let's say, to share. But I'm going to start with the foundation, which is the blueprint. And the blueprint is really, really essential to any journey, right? Laying down a strong foundation. And for me, I fell in love with hip hop. So the year was 1987. I was a junior in college, and I knew I didn't want to work for someone else. That was very clear to me, but I wasn't sure what I was going to be doing. My father was in the music business, so I was around a lot of musicians, a lot of music, and then hip hop came and just disrupted everything. Now you have to think we're talking about the crack era, we're talking about Reaganomics. There were a lot of things, socioeconomic factors going on, and I just wasn't happy with the state of the world. So one night I was hanging out and I went to Dapper Dan's from the Apollo Theater in college. And it was like an epiphany for me. Like, this is what I want to do. I was going to college for business and for fashion, the business and communication, but I always loved fashion. I just never owned it. But it wasn't until that moment at Dapper Dan's that I felt like I can do this. And it was because I was already in love with hip hop. I already understood music, and music and fashion are such self-expressions of everything, right? So I was like, I'm going to open this up, because at that time I wanted to rep Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn, and we didn't have the internet. It wasn't like this big thing where you could see everything everywhere at once. So I was just thinking about hip hop and serving my community in Brooklyn. And that's how I started Fashion in Effect. It was a hole in the wall. I made my own couch. I made my own, I brought everything from liquidators. I made a homemade sign that lasted 3 years, but it was mine. And I worked from the instincts, and I worked from my heart. And I just started creating. I started finding airbrushes. I started finding artists. They say success leaves clues. So write that down, guys. If you're not writing yet, write it down. Success leaves clues. So the first thing I did in that was watch Dapper Dan, and then borrow a few of his tailors, and then find other tailors at other factories and other places where people were making things, and talk to them and convince them to come work for me. I also found a foreman that knew how to manage tailor shops and seamstresses, etc. I learned all of these things watching these people. It wasn't like I went to school for it. I knew how to put pieces together like a Rubik's Cube. So my tribe started finding me. People started coming. They started hearing about this young woman who was making airbrushed outfits and leather suits and velour sweatsuits and denim and all of these interesting things that were of the culture that was manifesting at that moment. There was nothing that you could find in the stores that would speak to us, that were for us and by us. So I was very clear that I wanted to serve that tribe. And as a result of being intentional, that energy feeds itself. So it started spreading. It's like the dandelion effect. And that's what happened. And so 2 friends told 2 friends, because in that day there was no like internet or Instagram or anything, right? And that's how it traveled, word of mouth. And word of mouth can be the best credibility to this day, because you're going to trust something that your friend or your family member tells you over an ad or something that's being told to you by a corporation and you don't know them, right? So it just made sense. One day, Biggie came in, and he was this 15-year-old round kid that saw an airbrushed Eric B. and Rakim shirt in my window, and we struck up a conversation, and that conversation led to him coming back when he got signed with Bad Boy, he started buying Walkerwear. Then he became a customer. Then when he signed with Bad Boy, we started supporting him. And there were these moments that happened at Fashion in Effect that taught me about relationships and how important relationships would be to my business. If you get nothing else from this class, get relationships are so important. And relationships should be honored off of the internet as well as on the internet. That means you have to get in front of people. You have to live in your discomfort zone. You have to take the time to really nurture relationships, and you can't expect it to be like that. I know today things are very different and they're moving faster, but still you want to really take your time and cultivate relationships, because those relationships can take you the distance. So that's how I started. And in this foundation, as we continue to talk, we're going to talk about getting started. And the notes, what I want you to get from that story is that I didn't wait until I was ready and I've had everything figured out to start. I started before I thought I was ready. I started with my knees shaking. I started thinking, what did I just do? I was called for corrections. I took the corrections test in college. I was called for the fire department. My mom cried when I signed the lease on my first store, but I knew and believed in it with everything. There was no turning back. You couldn't convince me. So passion plus purpose will equal profit. Passion plus purpose equals profit. I believe that with everything, right? We're here to serve. So knowing who you're serving and how is a big, big step. And then once you become committed and you start, it's like this magic that happens and people start appearing and you start getting calls for help and you start finding solutions to things because you're in it and you've committed it. And so you start attracting it. I say, once you commit, the world will conspire to assist you. So just, you really have to be all in, all chips on the table. It's no half in or half out, unless you have a day job. Your day job might actually fuel your side gig, but even then you have to be committed, right? Because if you want that side gig to become your main gig, then you have to do some extra things, like wake up a few hours early, like go to bed maybe a few hours later, because you have to commit to putting in the work to fuel that dream. So just consider that. The second thing is getting started is brands that I've noticed that have legacy, and this is, if you do the homework, you'll see the same things, and some of you probably already know this. They address a pain point and they have a problem and there's a solution. So that's an excellent time for all of you right now, because we're in a state of emergency in the world right now with so many things that I think there's so many ways you can have a point of differentiation for your brand. What's unique about your brand? How is it special? You know, maybe you are being eco-friendly in your brand. Maybe you're thinking about sustainability as it relates to packaging, as it relates to everything, the planet, right? You want to really tell that story of why you are different. Maybe you have a brand that's addressing social issues, right? And you're using fashion and social statements. So you want to really craft that story and tell that to the world, why that matters to you, because you are the brand first, and everything you ideate, you create after. So you really want to be congruent with your brand and the ideals and the values that you create from that branding. And you know better than me that right now consumers are smart, they're on top of it, and they really want accountability. So you want to be intentional about your brand and how you're addressing whatever that is you're addressing, or what you're offering, how you're serving in your product. How is that special? And tell that story to the world. And the last thing is, you don't have to figure it all out on your own. We have Google, you have YouTube, you have so much. You're here on Creatively. Creatively is a wonderful platform to network, to find answers, so you can figure it out. Success leaves clues. So mentorship, finding the classes. There's so many classes. I don't even need to go through it, but just use the tools that are there now in finding those clues and creating those crumbs that create that trail. The trail is already there, guys. So just implement that when you're getting started. So far, I'm going to ask you now, before I go into this next stage, is everybody with me? Okay. Let's see. Have any questions?
Hey, April, we have a question, but I think we might save it to the end because it's really an exciting one. So we can keep going.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll come back to that. Okay, you guys can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so the second part of this process that I want to talk about is the process, right? It's in your building. Now you've committed to the process. You're saying, okay, I have my brand. I know I'm going to do this. I'm going to either work part-time and I'm going to work full-time and create this brand part-time, or all chips are in and we're doing this. So now you're committed. Then what? The building process. And this is what I call the muddy middle, or the messy middle, or the part that sometimes feels painful, but it's the part that you can't get around. There's no microwavable success formula, and you can't just push a button and be there. Like, this is the part that really counts. And when you look back after you get to that success, whatever that destination you have in mind, you're going to really appreciate the process, because it's what's giving you sustainability. It's what's giving you your power to go the distance. And once you go through each of these stages, you become experienced. And now you can say, it's not so bad. And the next time you go through a crisis or a problem or something in the process that you haven't done before, so it seems intimidating, it's not intimidating anymore, because you've addressed the elephant in the room, so to speak. So let's talk about it. Before you can really build that process, you want to be very clear. 3 C's again: confidence, competence, and clarity. You want to be clear about what your brand is and who you are, what that brand personality is. What's your brand identity? Like, you cannot hit your bull's eye without knowing the target, right? So if you want to sell clothes, why? Who are you in your brand? Why does your brand matter? I'm just throwing these questions out there because they're questions you should be asking yourself. Like, what's special about my brand? What am I offering to the world? Like, how am I going to have a give back? What is that give back going to be like? Am I helping? And who am I serving? Like, who is my audience? These are all questions you want to have, and see it, right? What is your value system in that? Like, for us, I'll give you an example. We were hip hopped out, and we were unapologetic about it. At that time, stores were saying, get out of here. Like, that's going to be gone in a few years. That music is a fad. So why should I buy into the fashion? So it was constantly having to show up with confidence and convince the buyer sitting across the table why it mattered, why it wasn't a fad, why we were going to be there, and why they couldn't get a discount. So you have to really be clear on your values, on your value, and your flexibility, and what you're going to stand for and what you're not, because everything is a negotiation in business, and fashion is no different. It's a business. So you want to be really clear about that. The second thing is, once you can see it, you have to see it, the end game. Meaning, like, where is your destination? Why am I doing this? Because once you start thinking about all these things, like value, like, why am I building this? Like, what do I really care about? Why do I want this brand success? What's your why behind it? because then once you have your why, the how to comes. And so once you understand that, you can now say, I can reverse engineer, because I know, like, for me, it's about collaborations now, right? But then it was about, I wanted to be a global brand. That's what I saw. I saw a global brand, and I saw me empowering my tribe to be able to have that experience with me. So it was, and I wanted to be financially, I wanted to be sustainable for the distance. So those were my goals, and I saw them, and I had to create the blueprint, and I had to reverse engineer. So that meant that I had to do a lot of research, because, like I said, I went to school for business and I did not know fashion. So the first thing I did was surround myself by people who were in fashion a lot longer than I was, experienced people. I asked them questions. The ones that I couldn't hire immediately, like executives, some of them I collaborated with on projects because I couldn't pay them an annual salary, or I just asked for their time. You'd be surprised when you ask people for their time and you ask them, you come prepared with your questions and all of these things. I mean, it matters, guys, because time is the most, that's our most precious asset. So when you come prepared and you show up like you want it, people are ready to really, some people just never get asked. That's what it is. So, and a lot of us don't ask because we're intimidated to ask. So, and now you don't even have to worry about that, because like I said, you have Google University, you have Creatively, you have so many different things you can dig into in terms of your toolbox. Have a toolbox. And what I'm saying is reverse engineer by taking the steps. Once you've done the research, you create those steps. You say, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. So for me, it was at that time, right? I'm going to talk about the then, and then I'm going to apply it to the now. So for me at that time, it was, I wanted to be this global brand, but I had to research and understand, oh, okay, I have to create a program. I have to create a line. That's how Walkerwear began. And once I say, we're going to do staples, because we were so Brooklyn. So we're just going to focus on earth tones, and we're going to focus on durability, and we're going to have quality product. Those are going to be our fundamentals that we stand on. Classic and timeless pieces that can represent lifestyle. You can wear it to the club, or you can wear it in the daytime to work. That was my goal. And it was workwear meets fashion, and it was serving my community. And this was what I was very clear on. And then the B part of it is, I want to be worldwide. So let me figure that out. So we started grassroots. That was phase one. We started from grassroots. We went to getting a suite in Manhattan when they had the big trade show at Jacob Javits. That was stage 2. And we invited 10 buyers. And those 10 buyers came to our suite and they bought. That was our first transaction with buyers of like chain stores. Like at that time, there was Merry-Go-Round, which was like 2,000 stores. And, this was all a process, but what we did was we did it in layers and stages. So that's what I'm telling you, do it in stages. Master stage 1, get that going. So you have to become familiar with selling, right? Because at every point in the game, we're selling. So you want to just kind of get familiar with it and keep yourself in a discomfort zone. Once you feel comfortable in that stage, time to move to the next one. But you've created this outline because you reverse engineered the steps and done the homework to know what you need to do. Even if you don't have it now, you're manifesting it. So you're moving, you're just knocking those blocks down one by one step at a time, taking your time to master each one. It's no race, guys. It's a marathon. So your only one you're in competition with is yourself. Your tribe will create your vibe, right? So your tribe is so important because get this, you figured out what you stand for, who you represent, and what you want to share with the world. Now you want to make sure that your internal tribe, meaning everyone that's on your team and that's down with you, make sure they're congruent and they're in alignment with those mission and that value. Apple did a great job of that with Steve Jobs, right? Everybody that works there seems to be creative. They seem to understand the principles, the values. I don't know about now, to be honest, but when they started, yes, like they did a very clear job at painting that picture. And you know what happened? They got an extended tribe of the same alignment. So if we do that right, the people that work with us and that grow with us and that collaborate with us on an internal level become our external customers and our external tribe. I hope that makes sense. You want to be in congruency with that. So find like minds. That's the bottom line. Find like minds that believe in the same values you do when it comes to your brand. You want people to understand your brand and to believe in your brand, because then it won't be selling, it will be sharing. And then the people that get your brand will love to support it because of it. It's of like minds at the same time. Think of it as energy feeding energy, and know that your people determine your product. So that's your tribe. Okay, before I go on, let me ask you if you have any questions. I see some. Should I share for a minute? Let's see.
Hey, yes, we do have a couple questions. One question is from Ava. She asked, what if you're passionate about your idea, but you can't see the end game or
You don't know the limits, right?
limits?
So Ava, if you're passionate about your idea, but you can't see the end game, it's okay, right? It's okay. You can get started and you know the beginning idea, right? Let me see what you say to that. Can you type the answer to that? You have a clear picture of that first stage, Ava? If you have a clear picture to your first stage, Ava, you can get started, because we're living in such fluidity, such fluid times right now, and time is moving so exponentially. Like even if you create a whole business plan, it's going to change. So if you have a clear picture of what you want to start with and why, start with that. It's going to shape itself as you start. Once you start, you can grow from that. And it's actually good if you're going to start with, that's controlled growth. You can start small. You can master that stage one, that foundation. And trust me, once you get in it and you start getting passionate about that first idea and you start building on that idea, the building blocks will come and you'll start seeing that in game as you continue to layer up organically. Does that make sense? I hope that did.
Thanks for such a great question, Ava. We have, Ava just shared that. Thank you for the encouragement. This has been such a helpful talk. And yes, it does make sense.
Great.
Another question we received is, how did you build your confidence?
So I don't want to say I had confidence, when you're really young and I started at 21, guys. So one of the things about being 21 is I was naive to fear, and that enabled me. I think that I was so naive to fear. Sometimes when we're really young, we think we're invincible. So I had that bug, as well as just really believing in this culture that was shaping itself and knowing I felt like the underdog, and sometimes when you feel like the underdog, that gives you strength. And it gave me a lot of strength. It propelled me to want to prove the naysayers and make them yaysayers. And the thing I would say to you is, if you don't have confidence, one of the things that will help you have confidence is a few things, right? I'm definitely not saying fake it till you make it, but practice makes progress, and progress makes perfect. That means you might have to live in a discomfort zone. And you might have to surround yourself by a lot of people that know more than you, and be uncomfortable and asking uncomfortable questions to discover new things, to grow, and to keep expanding. And in that way, after you do that, you're going to start really stacking new information and really processing and absorbing. And one thing that happens as you learn and as you discover, your confidence skills go up. And like I said, once you go through it and once you have that experience and once you have some answers, it's just a natural thing. It's an evolution, like, oh, I can do this. I know it now, you know? So, but you got to be in it. You can't sit on the sidelines. It's hard to build your confidence from the sidelines. Okay, should I go to the next one and answer the rest of the questions after, or should we keep going? I'm gonna go with, can you hear me? I'm gonna go with,
Let's keep on going. Sorry about.
no worries. You said, should we keep going or can I answer one more and then we go?
Oh, we can keep going. That'd be great.
Okay. All right. So we'll come back to the questions, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So let me get back to building. All right. So visualize, create, and sell. I'm going to talk about, I just told you about how I started. I'm going to say the then and the now. The now is very different to then. So then I was really wanting to be this global brand, and we started selling in Europe and Japan and all of these things. And I got overwhelmed and I got burnt out. I'll be honest. And I didn't like the fashion industry. Now I have a new approach on the fashion industry in my brand as it relates to my brand. And the reason I do what I do today is to stay creative, to extend a diversified portfolio, because I'm passionate about fashion. So I get to use my brand to create. And at the same time, I'm really big on collaborating. I get to collaborate with a lot of other creators, and I get to make an impact in the world by using my voice and storytelling through fashion. And I am very interested in serving my community and making a difference in that way. So that's the way I visualize it now. I'm strictly online. I use the tools of today. So you cannot buy walk-aware unless you're buying it from my e-commerce store. We do have a showroom, a shared showroom at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, but really during this pandemic, I have been working out of my home studio 90% of the time. And it's been very functional. So I'm a testimony that you can really create and produce and actually distribute in a one-stop shop nowadays. And you can tell your own story, but you have to pick up your own bullhorn. When I came back, I took some time off from being burnt out and just really needing to take that time. When I came back, it was really about how I wanted to use these tools of the digital era to empower my brand so that I could tell my story, so that I could create with other collaborators around the world. And I was able to do that through Facebook, through Facebook ads, through Instagram, through Twitter. You know, all of those tools help me with social media, and then crafting my own story and not waiting for others to find me to tell my story. So it's being creative in the ways you tell your story and not being like super bragging, or, you know, there's a fine line. I say confidence and humility can live in the same house. So think of that as you story tell. You know, you want to be confident, but you also want to be approachable. You want to be engaging with your tribe, and you want to really be interactive with them, and you want to listen to them the same way I listened to them before. I crowdsource. So when I create, sometimes I'll throw something on an Insta story like, what do you think? You know, you use all the tools that are there. The great thing about now versus then is you can create and you don't have to make 100 of them. You can actually create a cat if you want to and throw it up on the gram and get crowdsource, get feedback before you actually create. We had to hold inventory. Back in the days, I had to make 1,200 pieces of something and pre-sell it. And I might get stuck with inventory. You guys don't have to do that now. So you have so many things that are to your advantage right now in building your brand. You have to know where to fish to catch them, right? And that just means that you have to know who your audience is, who's your tribe. Be really clear on spelling that out to yourself. Who does that tribe, who are they? Define them, write it down, or type it, say who it is, put it in your notes. You should know your demographics of who you want to. You can't hit that bullseye without having that target. So be very clear to know, once you know them, where do they hang out? Are they on Twitter? Because Facebook and Instagram are two totally different audiences. For us, we have two different audiences. We have a younger generation and we have an older generation. So, we're blessed to have that, but know who you are. And we only have that because we're a heritage brand. So that's it. So that's a no spray and pray approach. When you have your market and you know that, that's a great thing, because you can be focused and you can focus in on who you're working with, right? And who your tribe is and where to fish. So I'm gonna start right here with sustainability and just talk a little bit about being a sustainable brand and what that means to me. Going a journey, it is being sustainable in itself, right? And it takes work, because part of that work is being able to be fluid and being able to be agile as an entrepreneur in order to be sustainable. You can't, even when you create a plan or as you're building, you need to be fluid. You need to be able to be like water and keep moving as things change and adapt with those changes. And so I like to think of sustainability as a people and planet, meaning that we're independent but interdependent. We can't care about one thing and not the other. We have to think about the people and the planet. And I would just say, for your brand sustainability, think of it as a marathon and think of it as an inside out job. If you care about people, you will care about the planet, because it's like, we can't be here without the planet. We need the planet, right? So if we need each other and we're thinking independently, that'll be a sustainable model in itself. And it will read us empathy, respect, there's social responsibility, ethics. You have an internal moral compass inside of your brand when you're thinking about that in terms of sustainability. Service, how is your product helping people? How are you feeling? Are you accountable to your customers? These are things to think about, sustainable questions. And then choices, make your own rules, right? Fast first fashion versus slow fashion. Am I using the right materials? Am I eco-friendly? All of these things. And you don't have to do all of these things, but these are questions to ask yourself when you're thinking about sustainability. And a challenge to think about the way you think about sustainability. And then being an agile entrepreneur, I just want to add to that, that we're living through unprecedented times, and you have an incredible opportunity to create your own story when it comes to your brand. And in creating that story, know that time is moving faster than ever. Like, it's moving so fast that when you're thinking about building this brand, guys, or if you're building the brand, you want to think about 5 or 10 years from now, not today. Because if you're thinking about today, you're late already. The second thing is disrupt. Don't be afraid to disrupt, because if you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, how are you standing out? And there's always an opportunity in crisis. And the last thing is, it's your story. Your story counts. You matter, and you can tell it any way you want to. Just make sure it's your authentic voice and you take the time to craft it in your own unique and special way. A few sustainable tools really, really quick, and then I'm gonna open it up for questions. Self-care, these are things that help me to be sustainable inside out. You will burn out in this business if you don't learn about self-care as a person, as a CEO, as a brand builder. So we all have our own toolbox, but find it for self-care. Make yourself non-negotiable. Create a schedule for personal time, wellness, automation tools. There's so many out, from Expensify to Creatively to all these technology tools that exist today. Teamwork and outsourcing, you know, find like minds to build with. Keep it simple, keep it lean and mean. You don't need big, go small, go narrow and deep. Keep learning, keep networking, keep sharpening your skills, and create a tribe that's going to make you stand on your tippy toes. You want to be around people that are going to stretch you, that are going to help you grow, and that are going to cheerlead, and you're going to do the same things. Thank you. You can find me at I Am April Walker and at Walkerwear. And at this time, I hope we have some time for some questions.
Hey, April, we do have time for questions. If you'd like to click the Q&A button, there are roughly 9 or so questions that are lined up.
Okay, cool. So I think I left off at the lingerie brand, right? Did we go over the lingerie? Nope. So I want to start a lingerie fashion brand, but my sewing skills are not the best. How would you approach this problem? I would say that find someone that sews. You design, you share your designed ideas, and then you find, let's be real, Ralph Lauren is not sewing his own stuff right now. You know what I mean? What's your model? Unless you want to be a custom model and you want to be the person that sews, then I would say, I don't know where you are, but there's so many different sewing programs that exist that you could actually learn how to sew, or you could learn on YouTube. You know, it just depends on what model you want to go with, and there are different ways of looking at it, and there are different ways to skinning a cat. Does that make sense, Jamie? In the very beginning, like I said, I didn't sew. I found people that sold for me. I implemented my designs and they sold. I ran the business and I designed, but I did not sew. So I learned how to sew, but I still am not the best at sewing. And I don't know if I would sell one of my pieces. I would wear it, but I hope that answers that question. What are some good productive brand activations to establish or showcase your brand's message or mission? What are some good productive brand activations? Nishama, can you tell me exactly what you mean by brand activations? I'm not really clear on the question. On amplifying your own messaging and mission? Are you asking that? If you're asking that, yeah, from organic grassroots. Okay, so think of social media as your storyboard and your visual storyboard, and how you take your time to think about how you would answer that, and then use that. I'm sorry, guys. Use that as a storyboard. That's very organic, but you can actually create that, right? And then the other way, like, so a clear example for you would be, if I'm creating a brand, an organic perspective, and I'm talking about sustainable shorts, I might have a fun fact about sustainability as one post. I might show the shorts in another post. I might, and another time, I might do a contest, you know, and then I might show myself, and I might share the journey from a very grassroots perspective, because the one thing you don't want to discount is that people, your tribe wants to take that journey with you as you're figuring it out. They want to see you grow. They want to see you in the basement. Then they want to see you on the first floor. They want to, and they feel so good, and they're so proud of you, and they're going to keep supporting you as you're sharing. So I'd use TikTok, I'd use Instagram stories, I'd use it all, and I'd use them all differently. And then as well, I'd start an email lister, and I'd be grabbing those, grab the database. You want to build your email list before you're even ready. You want to start building that, so then you can market to them, and you can update them through newsletters, and you can tell them what's happening in your neck of the woods. I hope that helps. Collaboration is big too. as well from organics. How did I build my confidence? I answered that one. Did I have a mentor? I did not have a mentor, and that's why it's so important to me now. I mentor a lot of brands, a lot of people, and I mentor a lot of young people as well. I also wrote a book called Walker Gems, Get Your Ass Off the Couch. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's all about the journey. And I think having a mentor is very, very important. It's instrumental to the journey, you know. And when I started, there was nothing in this lane and nothing that looked like me, and it was very hard. So I know now we have choices. So definitely mentors are key. Should I legally protect my brand name and logo before exposing my brand, trademarking the name and the image? Yes, I would suggest that strongly. You want to cover yourself and talk to a lawyer, have a good counsel as well. But you definitely want to trademark especially with social media, especially if it's a great name and image. You know, you don't want to put it out there until you're protected. I would say that. And if you're trying to figure it out, then you can crowdsource and say, do you like this or this? But if you've already decided, I'd say protect your brand. What's your relationship with fear, and how has that relationship changed? I think I take calculated risks now versus just like taking the Nestle plunge. I still think that I'm probably taking more risks than the average, but I've learned from some of the pitfalls at this point. So I weigh them differently, where before, like I said, I was naive to fear. I had to get burned a few times before I'm like, that was really hot, you know? What advice would you give to a photographer who's interested in photographing fashion? Okay, photographing fashion. I would say if you're interested in photographing fashion, Stanley, then you need to start doing it. You know, there are a million aspiring models. There are a million aspiring fashion brands. There are a million fashion brands that are looking for people like you to work with, to build their portfolios, to help them with their products when their product comes in and they have to do samples or lifestyle shoots. So it's really about networking, about hitting them up on social media, about finding out who they are and really networking and going to some networking events that can foster those relationships and build those relationships so you can get out there and start. How do you protect your brand ideas? You can protect your brand trademark. Designs, you can do some copywriting. It's very difficult to protect designs, and that's one of the hurdles that the fashion industry is dealing with now. And as you know, from Dapper Dan to myself, I'm dealing with that right now. It's very difficult, but it is possible, and you have to sometimes lawyer up if you get into a direct thing. But fashion, I'd say, they say nothing new is nothing true and nothing true is nothing new. So if you're really creative and innovative, you just have to stay on top of your game and keep creating new innovative ideas. And by the time they copy, you're onto the new thing. So that would be my advice. But protect your brand and its trademark, and you always want to protect the brand at all costs with your trademark. Hello, thank you for your time. How do you narrow down and finding a manufacturer? That's a good question. It depends on where you are. That's a very broad question, but I would say Makers Row is a good place to look online. I would say, I don't know if you're trying to, the Navy Yard has local manufacturer. It depends on where you are in your location, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of questions there, but online you could look at Makers Row and they have tons of manufacturers and you can kind of narrow down from there. I feel I followed my vision for Punk Majesty in the same way you did. I'm great with building a tribe in person, but feel challenged joining it online. It's not growing fast enough and I'm stretched thin. Any advice? Alicia, I'd say step outside of yourself. It's a pivot. We all have to make a pivot. So thank you for your honesty. And it's tough. It's been tough for all of us. And it's a little slower for a lot of us. But what it is, I think that we have to think about our revenue differently, right? So maybe it's doing something out of the box and having a new arm. Like for me, I'm thinking subscriptions, services. I'm thinking about a few different things, membership right now. I'm thinking about different and innovative ways to offer to my tribe outside of just selling. We just started bundles. Bundles have been really successful for us. So it's kind of like looking at what other people are doing and what's working for them. And if it fits you, saying, okay, then I can do it in this way with your Rubik's Cube, or it might be creating something totally new, right? Because subscriptions, typically those are somewhat new. They're coming in. I see them in beauty brands and they're starting in fashion, but it's something I think that can be done. So we want to lean into it early and be some of the early settlers. So once it's popping, we're there. So I would just say be very innovative in thinking about how you can create something differently, or another arm, another tentacle to your business that might help in your pivot. And maybe it's a new service that you have to add. Like we're actually looking at different retailers and how to collaborate with them in a different way. There's so many things you can do. So good luck. Great question. What was my favorite interaction while working in the hip hop world? I don't have a favorite. I work with so many greats that I just feel blessed. There were so many. One of my most surreal moments though was watching Mike Tyson wear my brand in a heavyweight ring in Las Vegas, sitting there ringside and seeing him walk in with the big WW and on his shorts. And I became the first American designer in fashion to grace a heavyweight ring. That was surreal for me. So that was one of those great moments. Best funding options for a new fashion brand. There are tons out there, guys. There's Kick Further you could look into. I don't know much about Cabbage. There's tons of people trying to give away money right now. I'd also suggest that before you fund, I suggest you look at grants. I know of a few grants that are going on right now. So Google grants, and you can look up grants and apply for those as well. How should I go about funding for my inventory? Kick Further is specifically for funding for inventory. You could pass the hat. You could do so many different things with that. I don't know how much you need for inventory, but if you're doing a lot, you might want to do. And there's also these new platforms like if you're on a very small level, I don't know the level you're on, but if you're starting out and you want to damage control or see how things are test marketing, you could do something like Redbubble and let them drop ship it, and you add up your profit. You might not make as much, but you can see what's really selling and you can monitor it. And then you can actually say, I'm going to invest into inventory. Those are those stages we talked about. I think I answered everyone's. Nope. Okay, how to price value on your clothing as the material or the brand name. How to price value your clothing. Okay, as a material. So you want to actually mark it up. That's hard to say because before you do that, you have to know. So the way you're going to make that decision is by deciding who is your customer, who are you serving, what is that price point you want to be at, who are you going to be competitive with, what's your, competition in terms of your marketplace, where you're serving, because that's going to determine whether you're going to have a smaller markup or a very high-end markup, right? And in that, you're going to say, that's how you're going to determine that. Also, you're going to look at, of course, the cost, right? What kind of value are you offering to the customer as well, in terms of the fabrications, in terms of the needlework, the craftsmanship. All of those things are considerations when you're talking about pricing your value and the experience they're getting. So I hope that I have helped you guys. My plans for Fashion Week. I don't have plans for Fashion Week right now. We have a lot of plans for this year, but we don't have plans for Fashion Week, Tracy. thank you all for these great questions. And I'm so excited for all of you. You guys have some, besides having great questions, I see a lot of dream makers here. I see a lot of people with very successful businesses. I can't wait to see what you do with them.
Thank you so much, April, for this incredible class. Thank you all for joining as well. April has her information here if you guys want to stay in touch, and we're also at Hello Creatively, but thank you all so much. We'll see you guys at our next couple classes.
Thank you.